Okay, so welcome, Kaytee. It's your turn in the hot seat. I don't know which order people are going to watch these videos, but obviously you've just grilled me, and it's now your turn to have the spotlight. And speaking of spotlights, you've really got quite a back glow there. Angelic vibes going on. So well done, you. So listen, what don't people know about you so far from this summer? What have they not learned about your background and story, and why you were crazy enough to jump into this with me? Where's the motivation come from, and what's set you on this pathway?
That's a really big question. What set me on the pathway? But I think we should dive in, because I think that this is, in terms of what don't people know about me. I mean, we've been focusing on all our experts, which is what we wanted to do. And then this idea of interviewing each other kind of popped up at the end. So I'll try to do the best that I can. What don't people know about me? So, okay. So I'm a functional medicine dietitian. And my journey here was really actually similar to yours, in that I didn't know what it was called, but I was called to it.
Yeah.
So for me, it starts back when I was a kid. I think everyone who's in the functional medicine or alternative medicine or holistic health field is there because of their own experiences. And I am no different. So my health struggle started when I was pretty young. But when I was really little, like a toddler, I had really bad anxiety, which, isn't necessarily abnormal, but that grew. And in early elementary school, I had really severe anxiety and gut symptoms. So, my mom remembers me saying, really, first grade, just always complaining of a stomach ache, just always a stomach ache. And, they took me to the doctors and no one could really figure it out. And they said it's because of her anxiety. There isn't really anything we can do. She'll grow out of it. Well, I didn't grow out of it. And in middle school, it got worse. And my anxiety became quite debilitating. And I had just really intense depression. I'm talking 12 years old. And at the same time, I was having a lot more GI symptoms and chronic infections, lots of antibiotics. This was before, we were told antibiotics aren't good for your gut, take probiotics, do everything you can to avoid it. I was hospitalized several times for infections, just antibiotics multiple times a year for, 10 years maybe. When I was 12, that all of those physical health, the things going on in my body, paired with some things that I had experienced in my life, mentally, psychologically, those kind of came together. And 12 was really a turning point for me. And I started cutting myself. By the time I was 14, I was drinking, I was doing drugs, I was not treating my body with kindness. I had an eating disorder. It was really a dark time for me. And being such a young person and coming from a reputable family, and people didn't understand it. And it was very much like, what does she have to be upset about? Like, this is about attention, that whole, and it wasn't taken as seriously as it should have been. And during that time, I had my doctors for my physical health, even though they couldn't find what was going on. It was just live with it. And I had my mental health support. Thankfully, my parents did get me mental health support, which was helpful, but they were two very separate things. And on both sides, the message was very similar in that you have an imbalance in your brain. This is what I was told. I mean, as a young teen, you have an imbalance in your brain. This is what your life is going to be like. And we can't find what's wrong with your gut. This is what your life is going to be like. And At 16, I attempted suicide. And that was kind of a turning point for me. Looking back at the time, I didn't realize it, but it was about that time I had a therapist, just a really, really important person in my life. She said to me, she knew what was going on, a lot of what was going on, not everything, but she could see that my lifestyle was also not conducive to health. And she said, you know, nutrition can play a role in mental health. And I said, bullshit. Sorry, I don't know if we need to edit that out, but I was like, that's not true. That can't be true. You know, at the time I'm 16, I've been dealing with this for most of my life, and no one had ever said anything about, you can be empowered. There are things you can do. It was always live with it, manage it, stop being so difficult, right? And so that was really empowering for me. And so she recommended me a book. You guys know I always point to my shelf. I keep it on my shelf as like a reminder. And I dove into that book, and you know, the book is outdated now, and it's been many years, and there's a lot more research about nutrition for mental health. But I didn't understand a word of it. I didn't know what amino acids were. I didn't know what omega-3s were. I didn't know what any of it was. But I was like, I'm gonna find out, and I'm gonna I can't live my life like this. So that kind of set me on a journey. She also introduced me to the fact that movement could be helpful for mental health. Now, at this time, I was still thinking of my mind and body as separate. I wasn't considering that gut health affects mental health in the immune system, and that mental health affects gut health in the immune system, right? Like it wasn't a picture to me. They were all very connected. So I started exercising. The first time I went into a gym, I had a panic attack. Probably the first 20 times I went into a gym, I had a panic attack. But I started going more regularly just to move my body. And between that and focusing on more nourishing foods, I started to see a really big improvement. And so I didn't know I was a total nerd, but it turns out I'm a total nerd. And so I was reading things I could get my hands on, you know, once podcasts kind of came into the world, which they weren't at that time, but once they kind of popped up, I was, you know, devouring all the podcasts I could listen to and just trying to understand. And I didn't know that functional medicine was a thing. I didn't know that lifestyle medicine existed. I had never heard of these concepts. They were not, I mean, even now they're not mainstream, but they were even less so back then. And my family had never heard of them. I grew up in a small town. It just wasn't a thing. So I started implementing these lifestyle healing modalities, so to speak, focusing on movement, focusing on nutrition. And I started studying psychology because I wanted to understand my brain better, and I wanted to understand health better. And I just wanted to be empowered. So from there, I ended up working in the fitness industry, which was actually really detrimental to me personally, because there's a lot of focus on body image, and there's a lot of what I call the bro science of like, you know, you need to be, you know, if anyone who's ever worked in a gym knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's all about, oh my gosh, drink all this whey protein and don't eat carbohydrates, and you eat 3 foods and you prepare broccoli, rice, and chicken, and you eat that for 6 meals a day and nothing else, and you count your calories, and it's just like, it's insane. And that was unhealthy for me too. So it ended up becoming this balance over the years, this balance of how can I take care of my body and my mind through my lifestyle, and how can I do it in a way where I don't become obsessive, I don't become addictive, and it's like, it just becomes the way that I live, and I can have a healthy relationship with that. And that took, you know, 10 years or so to really find that balance. And it's still something I'm very like mindful of. But after I studied psychology and I worked in fitness, and I was studying nutrition, I was studying movement, I was studying sleep and toxins, all these different aspects, I knew that I wanted to dive further. So that's when I went back to school. I got my master's degree in nutrition, health span, and longevity. And for postgraduate, studied functional medicine. And again, it's very much this story of I followed what called to me, and I didn't know that this would end up being, I mean, I live and breathe this stuff now, and I didn't know that that's where that journey would lead me. And, you know, when I was going through the depression and suicidality, I mean, that went on for years. I mean, I don't know, 10 years of just wanting to never wake up again. And I always wonder, like, if it would be worth it. What would I do with this? You know, what's the point of suffering? And now, looking back on it, it feels like this was why, so that I could share this with other people, because I know what it's like to feel helpless and to be told there's nothing that can be done, and to be told there's nothing I can do, and to not be taken seriously, and to be brushed off, and to really just not be heard. And now, you know, in my work as a functional medicine dietitian, I work with people across the board in terms of what symptoms they present with, but my heart is really with what I experience, that psychological piece. And I find that every person who I talk with, there's always a psychological piece, because how can your body be out of balance in your mind and your brain, right? I heard this saying in my studies, I can't remember who said it, but the brain and the body are connected by this thing called the neck. And it's so stupid, and it's so simple, and it's so obvious, but why do we treat mind and body as separate? So I know I'm going on, but I want to tie in finding what was at the root of, so creating this like healthy lifestyle was the first part, and very much needed, and it made an incredible difference in my health. But even once I got to that point, I was still struggling. Less, but I was still struggling. I still had chronic GI symptoms. I would have what felt like times of severe brain fog, and still some anxiety, still some depression occasionally. And after addressing all the things, it was like, what is really at the root of this? And after being told for 15 years that nothing was wrong with my gut, I finally met with a functional medicine provider. This was when I started studying functional medicine. Do you know what they found? After 15 years of being told it's all in my head, I had 2 parasites. I had a pathogenic bacteria overgrowth. I had leaky gut. I had unknown food sensitivities. And I had small intestine bacterial overgrowth. What else?
That's
gut dysbiosis, right? All of the things. Oh, and I had mold toxicity. I had all of these things that were actually at the root of what I was experiencing. And so the first step was creating a lifestyle that fostered wellness, and it did a lot of improvement. But until I really got at the root of what imbalances had already been occurring because of whatever had happened in my life, that was also at the root. And trauma. I mean, I had experienced a lot of trauma, and I would say that was also at the root, getting, support for that as well. And so that's what led me here. That's the longest answer to any question anyone's ever given in this summit, but that's why I'm here, and that's what I do, why I do what I do.
And we're so much more alike than I even realized. You know, our stories are quite different, but really the emotion and the journey behind it is very similar. As you said, when I was, you're asking me questions, like you're putting the mind and the body together. And I was like, well, yeah, of course. But it never occurred to me not to. And yet in your world, it never occurred for people to put them together. And so the answer is the same, that they are one and the same. They're not the same thing. They are one. They're connected.
Yeah.
And until that's addressed, until that's recognized, until that's respected, you're only going to get at best get halfway. Right. And you've experienced that because you were not even taken halfway into healing. And without trying to sound like condescending, because I don't mean it in this way, but listening to that story breaks my heart the way that seeing my animals suffering breaks my heart, because it's the same thing. They're not being listened to. They're not, what they're experiencing is saying, oh, well, it's only an animal, don't worry. It's all in your head. Get over it. There's nothing you can do.
You're 14. How bad can it be?
Yeah. Right. And not respecting somebody's lived experience, there's this amazing word in German called Umwelt, and the Umwelt of an individual is their lived, perceived, experienced world. It's what they feel, think, see, and do, all wrapped up in a bubble. So this is Umwelt. And so that's what I always tried to, as a scientist and as an animal welfare friend, to connect with and understand. If I can understand your Umwelt, I can unpick all the mysteries and figure it out and solve the problem. Like, that's the key thing, is I'm always just trying to solve that problem. I'm solving that problem. And people didn't understand your Umwelt. They didn't take the time to go, that's actually real. That's actually genuine suffering. There's a real problem here. It's not just, in the mind. And no wonder your levels of passion and dedication are sky high, because no doubt you can instantly see when someone else is on that same pathway and they've had that same, slamming of the door in their face and like, nothing for you.
I've never heard that word before, and that's really beautiful. I love that. And yeah, I felt very alone, and I felt like no one had had the experience that I was having. And now in my work, every single person I've ever talked to has the same through line, which is they have not been heard and they have not been taken seriously, and no one has believed that experience. I mean, whether it's depression or anxiety, or, oh, it's IBS, just deal with it, or it's arthritis, take a pill, or whatever it is, it's always, I mean, that's why people go to functional medicine or alternative or holistic. I mean, that's why I did, is because they're not going to take that answer. Yeah. And that's why I think in this group, in our summit, but just more broadly speaking, people who seek functional medicine are a very specific type of people, and they're not satisfied with the status quo. And to me, that shows a level of bravery and all you have to do, like, this is easy. All you have to do is be open to it, right? Like you said, not taking, being open-minded is really important. Our current healthcare system tells us one thing. It focuses on symptom management, and that's it. It doesn't focus as much on the healing. It doesn't focus as much on the preventative. I mean, I can only speak to the US because that's where I am, but I chatted with and worked with folks in other countries, and it seems to be a very similar model. But the current model is sick care, and it's not focused on healing. It's focused on symptom management. And it's very disempowering. And to push against it is scary. I mean, it is. I know, because I've been there, and I work with, sometimes I collaborate with my patients, like traditional doctors, to try to take a team approach, and you do this and I'll do this, and like, let's work together. And sometimes I get a lot of pushback. so I know that pushback is there, but I also want to give like this message of hope, and that if you don't want to take the answer you were given, you don't have to, because there is more. And if you feel like there is something wrong or out of balance, or you feel like you're not living your best life, then you're not, and something is wrong, and you deserve to have that support. I hate here in the US that like healthcare costs money. I mean, I guess it does, right? In one way or another everywhere, but it's such a foundational, it shouldn't be a privilege. It should be a basic human right. And I think that starts with education. And a huge piece of the puzzle that's missing is we're not taught how to take care of ourselves. We might get a health class here and there when we go to school, but like not really. I mean, I never even took a health class ever, not until I went to college. I don't even know how that's possible. How are we not taught to take care of ourselves? And, we have this diet culture as well on top of that, where we're told to restrict. It's about your size and it's about your shape. And we're told to tune out of our bodies. If you're hungry, drink water. If you have cravings, chew gum, right? All for the sake of like having a certain shape and size and fitting whatever the norm is, instead of tuning into what our body needs. And, you know, when I say body, I mean like our whole selves, our mental health, our physical health, and reconnecting with that can be challenging because I think we've lost that. You know, I've never been anything other than born female, identify as, you know, cisgender in this society. But I know that as a woman, those messages are really strong. But I would expect that no matter what your identity is, you still have those messages in one form or another. And I think that can separate us from our health. It can cut us off from what we really need. And so there's multiple aspects playing a role. It's our sick care model, it's our lack of education, it's our diet culture, it's being told that being exhausted and having, you know, gut issues and bloating all the time is the normal, right? Just live with it. A lot of these things have come up from us before, but it sounds like a depressing message, but it is a message of hope, and that there is another model and you don't have to live with your symptoms.
Yeah. And you don't have, yeah. The epiphany that I had, that aging is largely optional, disease is almost completely optional, was just earth-shattering. Like we just take for granted that those are the things that happen. And so by default, then we're ingrained to believe that it's just natural when you get sick. It's just normal for this species to get that disease, or for that person to have that suffering. And suffering then as a result becomes a two-layered thing of, not just are you going through whatever the discomfort and limitation or, you know, debilitation is, but you're also going through that social ostracization kind of thing. It's that profound loneliness because you have withdrawn from normal society because you haven't got the fitness or stamina or health or whatever to do it. And so, and then nobody likes to talk about, you know, all the aches and pains and diseases and sicknesses. Like, it's a pretty grim topic, but when that's
people don't know how to handle that either. If you're sick, if you're experiencing symptoms, we don't know how to support, right? Like, so people don't have enough support.
Being seen, like, I see you and you're worth taking the time to see and to understand and to help. And for someone to bring compassion into the frame, I think is everything when it comes to this kind of thing. You may not have all the answers to help someone heal. You might have some advice and some things to suggest, and that's lovely. But more importantly than that is to address that other part of the suffering, which is getting rid of that isolation and that sense of loneliness and of not being seen and of not being valued or being worthy of any. And, you know, and so because you have had the sharp end of the stick of that for so many years, you know, your compassion enters the room 5 minutes before you arrive. Like, you just carry that with you as this enormous presence. And that's the difference of working with someone who can be in your shoes, someone who's walked that journey, and you are not going to give up on them. The others, you know, the sad thing is that so often this type of modality, you know, functional medicine, regenerative healing, these things, they're often someone's last resort because they've already tried all the other things and they didn't work. Funny about that. But they finally get to the point where this is heard of and discovered, or, you know, whispered about or something, and they're like, okay, well, I've got nothing to lose at this point, let me try that. What if we could turn that around and make it so that this stuff was people's first point of call, where the real healing is addressed both at that suffering physical level and at that emotional need for compassion and kindness and to be seen and heard? Then we wouldn't even need any other modality, because this covers everything. And it I don't know, this is supposed to be your interview and I feel like I've just like given a little speech here, but tell me
you're absolutely,
what's resounding.
What's that?
Just tell me what's you know, what's resonating with you on that.
I mean, all of it's resonating. You're absolutely right. a fundamental part of the healing process is being heard and being validated and being supported. And in my work, in my private practice, usually that initial session that I have with someone, like we get on a call and we're like, okay, is this a good fit? Yeah, okay, great, we're gonna move forward. Okay, we get on our first call, and it's usually it's sometimes up to 2 hours, an hour and a half to 2 hours. I mean, I don't know about you, but like I've never experienced that in the conventional model, because the support, I can't, it's not my healing journey, it's theirs. And if I don't listen, and if you, on the flip side, if someone listening to this doesn't feel heard, whoever's supporting you isn't really catering it for you, because they're not listening to your experience. It's a one size fits all, a band-aid, we put it on it, bye-bye, because to get to that nitty gritty, to get to the experience, to put the pieces together, to talk about it all and to dig into it all together. I mean, this is very much a journey. This is not me saying, this is what's wrong, this is what you need to do. It's what's making you feel better? What's making you feel worse? What about this? Have you thought about this? I'm thinking this could be going on. What do you think? Right? It's an exchange, and it's a partnership that we move forward together in, and they are just as much a part of their healing journey as I am. I mean, they're more, right? Because I'm here to support and present options, and this is what I think would be valuable. This is what it's going to cost. This is what it's going to take. This is how intense it's going to be. What are you thinking? How do you want to move forward? These are our other options, right? Again, because everyone is on their own journey, but in our conventional model where we have, 7 minutes or less with our healthcare practitioner, and stats show that usually you're interrupted in less than 30 seconds after you start talking, you're not being heard. I wasn't heard. And not only is it invalidating, but we're not able to foster healing in the way that we otherwise could and should and can. And so, to your point, being heard, the compassion, the empathy, the journey together is a big part of it. And the other part of it is just to take the right approach, right? We need that. But then in and of itself, being heard is just so important for our own being. So it's both and.
You've started to touch on what it's actually like to work with you, what it's like as a client or a patient. Where does that journey go next after you've had this consultation and conversation and the building of a trust relationship for a journey of, and partnership, I think was the buzzword really there. No one's doing this on their own.
Yeah. So
what happens next?
So I kind of skipped a step, actually. So the step before we actually have like our 2-hour conversation is I want to get as much information as possible. Like when we're on the call, I want to be having a conversation. I don't want to be checking boxes. Okay, and you're dealing with this? Great. And what about this? Okay, great. Right? So I get all that information ahead of time, like medical history, symptoms. I look at symptoms. Tell me about your tongue. Tell me about your eyes. Tell me about your nails. Tell me about your hair, right? Because everything is connected, and we can see a lot of this showing up in other areas of the body. And usually when people fill out that symptom questionnaire, they're like, I never even thought about the fact that my vision is blurry. Or like, I never noticed that I had white spots on my nails, right? Or, the symptoms showing up in other areas of the body, but it really gives us a good picture. So we do symptoms, we do health history, and then we also do lifestyle. So I have what I call my 6 lifestyle pillars. Nutrition is one of those. It's the foundation, and it literally looks at what's your typical nutrition pattern, what's your typical movement, sleep, right? All of the 6 pillars. So that I already have a foundation, so that when we meet, I mean, that in and of itself is probably more information than they've ever shared with people. People are like, oh my God, this is like kind of personal. I'm like, I know, but your health is personal, right? Like share what you want, but the more sharing you want to do, the better I'll be able to support you. And then, so I have that information going in, and now the conversation, we've already started the conversation without being face to face. And so it's the next level. And then when we meet during that 2-hour, we do something that's very specific to functional medicine. If you've never heard of this before, you might find it interesting. It's called like doing a timeline. Have you heard of this?
A little, but
Okay.
I think people probably want to hear this.
Okay.
So go further.
So we literally start. So we've talked about where you're at, right? You come to your doctor or your dietitian or whoever it is, and you're like, these are the symptoms I'm struggling with. Okay. I say, let's start at the beginning. How was mom's health before she got pregnant? What was pregnancy like? Vaginal birth or C-section? Breastfed or bottle fed? How was your health as a kid? Any antibiotics? What was the first, illness or symptom you ever had? So we go through literally from birth to current, and we look at the development of symptoms and where symptoms came up in different areas of the body and when. And we try to identify what are the antecedents, like what came first, what kind of set the stage, what were the triggers. We see this a lot where things were kind of boiling under the surface, one thing happened and boom, health fell apart, right? And then what are the mediators or the perpetuators, the things that are making it worse on the day-to-day? So we identify that and we put that into the timeline. And for that, I find that it's very eye-opening for both me and the individual, because we don't usually look at our life in that way, especially not our health, of a journey leading up to where we are. And now we have this roadmap, right? We know where you are, but we know what came first, how you got there, and we know what the end goal is. So now it's just a matter of putting together that roadmap for how to connect where you are to where you want to go based on what you've been through. And that's how we develop that roadmap. And then from there, we might do functional testing. We might do, that could be comprehensive stool testing. That could be organic acid testing, nutritional evaluation, these different types of functional tests to really identify now what's at the root. Some people, lifestyle is enough. But most people, by the time they get to me, there's already processes going on in their body that need to be addressed. Once we can heal that, then they can maintain it with lifestyle. So, you talked about your different tiers. For me, it's like that first tier is lifestyle. How's your nutrition? Are you nourishing your body properly? Are you sleeping well? Are you moving? Toxins, what's your toxin exposure? How's your mindfulness and stress? And do you have the community? Those are the 6 pillars. How is all of that? Because that's the foundation. In addition to that, what else has been going on for me, right? It was the small intestine bacterial overgrowth, the SIBO, the parasites, the leaky gut. Those things had to be healed. Vitamin and mineral deficiencies, those things had to be healed as well. And then now just maintaining that lifestyle extends that health long term so that it's also preventative for the future. And if something does, right, I'm human, right? I get sick sometimes. If something gets out of whack, I know very quickly, because I know what level now I can function at and feel good at. And so if anything's off, I know, like I have, a gluten sensitivity. And if I'm exposed to gluten, I know that day, because I'm now that in tune with it. I can look at my tongue and say I was exposed to gluten because my tongue looks different. Like, you can become so in touch with your body when you know what it's like to function at your best. But if you've never been there, you really don't know. I mean, I didn't know. And most of the time, when I talk with people or when I work with people, we'll do their symptom questionnaire like every month or even more frequently, depending on what we're doing. 6 months later, they look back at their first questionnaire and they were like, oh my God, I had no idea I was so sick and miserable. Because it's just your normal, right? You talk about the frog and the boiling water. I feel like this analogy is overused, right? You put the frog in the water and you turn it up to boiling and it'll die. But if you put it in, it'll jump right out. Once we get you feeling better from the inside out, when something is off. But I can guarantee, if someone listening is dealing with symptoms, like, you can feel so much better. You can feel the way you want to feel. It's not, like you said, it's not a product of aging. It doesn't have to be. We can get you back there, right? What did we say? # be like Frank, right? We gotta have the energy of our youth. If you guys don't know that reference, you gotta go back and watch the previous expert interviews. So
it's like being a detective, isn't it? Because
oh yeah,
I keep saying all the time, spot the small signs, like SSS, spot the small signs, because as soon as your pet is giving you a little bit of an indication, as soon as you see they're a little bit off, take notice that day and figure out why that's the case. And if it's okay again tomorrow, okay, that's great. Let's just keep monitoring that doesn't come back. But if it goes from 1 day to 2, then you are getting clues. The body is giving you clues, whether it's your own body or your pet's body. These little symptoms and signs are the clues that there's an iceberg growing underneath, and it's pushing up to the point where it's now starting to be visible. And if you can address it up here, then all of that starts to disappear and go away again. And if you don't, that's when you get that eruption of disease. Like you said, there's the straw that breaks the camel's back moment. And so being a detective is really hard. Like, let's think of, like, in literature, like Watson would have been a pretty rubbish detective without Sherlock Holmes, right? He was the boss. He knew the things. He could tell, the stories, right? And so through working with through working with Holmes, Watson becomes a really great detective. But until we have a functional medicine doctor, nutritionist, dietitian, expert, or a holistic veterinarian, or someone who's specialized in spotting those signs and recognizing what they mean, interpreting them correctly, and being able to help you reverse them, then you're on your own going, I don't know what's going on. I don't know that I'm feeling rubbish. And it's not then until you have that contrast of, wow, I have the energy of a 10-year-old. I remember this feeling. This is no wonder people have been raving about what it's like to be healthy or have energy or whatever that, fill in the blank. And to be able to empower someone to have that level of transformation, I don't know. I mean, I do know because I know you well enough to know this, but I mean, isn't that just like the pinnacle thing to be able to say, listen, let me help you be set free. Let me help you unlock that shackles of limitation, of pain, of lethargy, of suffering. Life is here to be enjoyed. It's there. It's so rich. And if we're hamstrung and held back in this way, then the loss, I don't know, I kind of ran out of words. So I think you should introduce us into how you're feeling about that and where you take people after that discovery.
You're very right. And I like that analogy of the shackles, because that's what illness and disease really is. Yeah. We are really held back by it. And it affects every aspect of our life. So yeah, I really like that. In terms of what happens next, I mean, we go through that process. Again, using the 6 lifestyle pillars with nutrition as a foundation. Sleep is a really big, we've talked about that, and some of the other experts have said, like, oh, sleep is really big. Yeah. Oh my gosh, absolutely. So we look at those lifestyle factors, and then we look at, especially when it comes to nutrition, that pillar for me is individualized nutrition, because I take a very non-diet approach. I do not recommend eat a sheet of paper, eat this, not that. Like, that's not how it works. Everyone is really unique and different. And so we really have to work to identify what's the best eating pattern for each person based on their body. If they have any food sensitivities, that's a really big aspect. Unknown food sensitivities, personal preferences, lifestyle. What do you like? What do you not like? What does your body need? Is there inflammation? How's your gut health, right? So catering it, but doing it in a way that it's sustainable. So each time we meet, it's what's another principle we can learn about, right? You mentioned education. I mean, education is huge. What's going on in the body, and how does nutrition support that, and what kind of nutrition, and how can we implement that into your life? So it's all of the above. And so once and how your nutrition can either cause or reduce inflammation, how to eat to foster that, how to move to foster, right? So that education is important, but that implementation piece, I love that, what I call the hand holding. I think that is the part that we really miss with this. Here's a handout, eat this, not that. It's finding what works for you and making it a sustainable lifestyle. And then, of course, addressing whatever underlying issues are there. If there's things in the gut that shouldn't be there, we got to get rid of those. If you're missing things, we got to replace those, right? We got to heal the gut. We got to do all the things. So it's I see it as kind of 2 aspects. We have the short-term, like in-depth therapeutic approach, and then we have the long-term creating a sustainable lifestyle. And they go hand in hand, but they're I think about them a little bit differently, because in the beginning, there might be things that we do for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. We're not going to be doing that in a year from now, right? But we got to provide healing and replenish whatever the body doesn't need, or get rid of whatever the body has that we don't want it to have. And then you can kind of just go into that almost like a maintenance mode.
And so for people who haven't seen mine first, your interview of me first, can you break the news, make the announcement of the thing that we're going to do that basically does what you've just talked about there?
Yes.
With the real presence alongside you. Just share that.
Yes. So in my one-on-one work, we're really doing this in-depth testing and therapeutic approach and all of the things. But I find that at the foundation, we need that lifestyle that supports health and longevity, right? So the two of us are going to be launching a coaching program for pet parents and their pets to really create this lifestyle that fosters those lifestyle pillars, again, in a way that's sustainable, that you're equipped and empowered with the knowledge, but also with the implementation strategies, so that you can live a life that is sustainable, addresses the different pillars of wellness for you and your pet, and really anyone in the home. I mean, obviously, you can't control other people, but when there's a certain environment, everyone living in that environment is affected. So we're going to talk about nutrition, we're going to talk about movement, we're going to talk about sleep, toxins, stress, community, all of those 6 pillars, so that you can create this lifestyle that's sustainable for you individually. And then Penny, of course, you're going to, be focusing on all things pets and on the animal longevity side. But as we know, and the whole reason we're doing this summit is there is so much overlap. So that's really, I think, the foundation of health, having that wellness lifestyle. And that is our goal, to help folks listening who want that kind of support to have the community around them and the guidance to create that for themselves. So that is our big announcement. And I know you speak a bit more to what it looks like on the animal side in our reverse roles, where I interview you.
So on the basis of there being that much stuff to share on the preliminary level, and then the second tier, but the 6 pillars, and okay, so that's a lot of information. We've been asking most of our speakers for a nugget, what's an amazing insight that isn't overwhelming a place to start. What are your some of your best handfuls of pixie dust magic fabulousness that people can do straight away?
I think about this a lot, because obviously we've been asking everyone else this. So I've been thinking about, what would mine be? Now I have the opportunity to share, and now I'm on the spot, and I'm like, oh, there's so many. Okay, so I think the first thing, and this is like a little bit, ethereal, so to speak, but I think that the first thing is really identifying your why, because a healing journey takes time. And whether you're a pet parent or a human parent, or just a caregiver, or just naturally drawn to care for other people and empathize with other people, we often neglect our own health and wellness for the sake of other people or other animals or other loved ones. And we have to flip that script, because you don't need to earn your health. You don't need to earn your rest. You don't need to earn your wellness. Your value is not tied to your productivity or your ability to help other people. And if we can let go of that and kind of turn all eyes on you, you deserve to feel your best. And if you can identify what your best life looks like, what having that optimal health will allow you to do or allow you to be that you aren't already doing or being, that's really key. Because health in and of itself, like, It's a tool that we use to live the life we want. So if you can identify your why it's so important for you to find healing, that's really the foundation of all of it. Because eating well to eat well, or sleeping well to sleep well, that's pointless. It's about how it's affecting you. So I would say the first part is identify your why. And I would say first, when you come up with your why, when I worked in fitness, people used to always say, oh, because I want to lose weight. And I'd say, okay, but why? Oh, because I'm going on a trip and I want to wear a bathing suit and I want to feel good. Okay, why? Okay, because I'm right. And so now you're getting deeper. Oh, I guess because, I just don't really feel comfortable in my body. Why not? Well, I feel really bloated and I feel tired and I just don't feel good. Okay, why? And so you keep digging about what's going on. And then ultimately you come down to, why does all of this matter for you? And it's not about the weight. And it's not just about getting rid of the bloating or whatever it is. I'm just making stuff up. It's about living your version of your best life. I want to give a quick example. I worked with a gentleman whose goal was to improve his fitness. Why? Well, I want to get better, cardiovascular fitness. He's, in his 70s. Okay, but why? Well, I want to be able to travel more. Why? Kept asking why. You know what his why was? His first grandchild was born in Colorado. He was living in California and he could not see his grandchild for the first time because his lungs couldn't take the altitude. And his why, I literally get chills every time I tell this story. His why was to meet his grandchild and to be with his family. Like, if that's not a reason to get your butt in the gym, I don't know what else is, right? But it's so much more than going through the motions. It's to find that healing. So whatever your why is, that's important. And I would encourage every single person to hold on to that and keep that at the foundation, because anything else on top of that, even when it's hard, even if it, whatever it is, it goes back to that. And that why is always going to be worth it. So I know, again, that's not like a super sexy action item, but I truly believe that that's at the foundation of starting that journey, and something that all of us should really do.
That's really profound. And I love that because as you may have noticed by now, I have a why behind most things I do, and I'm pretty crystal clear about it. But then thinking just to the start of the summer, we posted or asked people to post in the Facebook group, take a picture or tell us, what is your why for caring about longevity? What is your why for caring about regenerative and functional medicine? Like, why? And the feed just blew up with all these pictures of people with their pets. It's the relationship of love as the why. And you've just given another example of that with this beautiful grandfather. There isn't a better why that I can think of. My why was, I want to be the friend of the sea lions. I want to have that friendship of love, and it's the same thing. I'm just, slightly odd, and I want to do it with sea lions. Most people want to do it with other people, but
it comes down to love. I think for most people, at the root of that, it comes down to love and being with the people that are important to you, or the beings that are important to you. That's I think that's most. I heard this saying once recently. I'm going to try not to butcher it, but it was, what is the thing in life? It's talking about prioritizing and putting your energy towards deciding where to put your energy. And it was, what is the thing that you're afraid of? What's the thing that you don't want to miss out on? Like, that's your reason. Most people fear death, right? So what is the thing that makes you fear death? Because you're going to be losing it. For most people, it's not, oh, I don't want to die because I don't want to stop, I don't know, working this job I hate. For most people, it's something that they love, something that they're called toward, and usually it's the people. And that's often at the why.
Yeah. As we wrap up then, I mean, that was already pretty profound, but is there any other pearl of wisdom that you would like to share? Any final parting message, as you know, I mean, this is almost like the final note of the entire summit, so no pressure, but is there anything that you want to add to that already magnificent piece of, you know, imparted wisdom?
I think that for me, the message that I wish I had heard for many years was that your experience matters and you deserve to be heard and you deserve to be supported and you deserve to feel your best so you can be your best, not for the sake of society and contributing to society or supporting someone else, for you. Like you deserve that as a being on this planet. You deserve to feel at your best and to live your best life. And if you feel like you're not there, I would really encourage you to find support in someone who hears you and who sees that and who's going to listen and who's going to support you in the way that you want to be supported. Because it is possible. And if you're not feeling your best, there's a reason why. If you've been told there's nothing else you can do, that's a lie. There's always something you can do. And usually there's a lot. So keep hope. That's my message.
Amazing. Amazing. I love it. I don't think there's anything else to be said. I think you've shared your heart, you've shared your story, you've been very candid and very brave. And I can't help but think, what if we had lost you back then? What the lives that you're touching and the work that you're doing and the passion that you're bringing, the healing that you're sharing would have all been lost. And it really is a message of hope that you're sharing, that anyone else who is feeling like life is against them, that it doesn't have to be like that. And it's your life and you get to choose how you live it. And if you want everything, you can have everything. You just have to ask the right questions of the right people to find the right pathway to get there. And you did. And I'm really proud of you.
You're making me cry.
Making me cry.
Thank you. The 14-year-old inside of me that means a lot. Thank you.
Okay, I am really crying.